Welcome back to the channel. Ladies and gentlemen, we got another Jubilee reaction. I find this reaction to be valuable considering all the, you know, bad blood between Palestinians and Israelis. I would argue that Jubilee should have done this sooner, personally. I think this would have been very valuable if this was done a bit sooner. Regardless, this is still a necessary conversation. This conflict is not going to go away until a resolution is put in place, and understanding other people's perspectives is important. Let's dive into it.
Ethnic cleansing.
I don't support
getting
that
everyone
solution.
out of here.
My first surrounded claim is that Israel is not committing apartheid or genocide.
All right, if you would like to be the first debater, please get to the chair in 3, 2, 1.
How's it going? Good, how are you?
So before I start, I want to lay some groundwork. I want to start with a working definition of genocide, some legal and historical examples, and then I want to demonstrate Israel's intent, their policies of genocide, and then the results. So in terms of a working definition of genocide, it would be to destroy with the...
All right, let me put it on 1.25 speed. You already know, broken brain, we already here. And let me give my own answer. Israel's not committing apartheid or genocide. I think you could definitely say they are committing apartheid. Let's get a working definition, dare I say, of what an apartheid is real quick. Do or die, I'm alive. Right here. I just apartheid in the language of Africans was a system of legislation that upheld segregation against non-white citizens of South Africa. Is it just like the separation of peoples? Is it, to put it simply, it's a governmental system where the one group of people is in charge of another group of people. I mean, if that's the definition, I think you can say that Israel's doing apartheid. The Israelis have control over the Gaza location. So I think that's fine. Genocide. My thing is, genocide is like it's the very intentional, clear, intentional means of destroying a group of people. I think that definition is held up so it can be properly categorized for different atrocities that happened in human history. For what the Nazis were doing, they wanted to eliminate all Jews. I don't think the plan here for Israelis is to eliminate all the Palestinians. I think what's going on is they are not very caring. I mean, they care, but they're not doing their best effort to keep Palestinian civilians alive. Of course, they're giving them warning, of course, but overall, their mission of eliminating Hamas takes precedent over civilian lives. And I think they are doing displacement. I do think there's a lot of people in the government that do want to remove a lot of Palestinians from the area for their own individual purposes. And you could argue that's a national security. So is it committing apartheid? I would say yes. Is it committing genocide? Legally, no. But morally, if we consider genocide the elimination of a specific race of people, and we kind of keep it in a vacuum of just death without context, I think I understand why you would use that terminology. So let's see if they can parse out these two things. I doubt it. But I do think this is an important bridge. Definitions are important here.
The intent is to destroy a group in whole or in part. Some historical legal analogies that I think are analogous to the case of Gaza is the case in Bosnia, where the Bosnian Serb army killed 8,000 men and boys. This was ruled to be a genocide by the ICJ. Another 30,000 women and children were forced to flee. This was done so to facilitate an ethnic cleansing. So murder under the laws of war to motivate a population to be ethnically cleansed. In terms of Israel's intent, Benjamin Netanyahu said it plainly and clearly last year under testimony with the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Knesset. He said, we're destroying more and more houses. Sooner or later, they'll have nothing to go back to. our problem right now is just finding a country that's going to take the Palestinian refugees. So they're murdering Palestinians in Gaza.
Was reported by to have told a close Knesset committee that Israel is destroying more and more houses in Gaza. Palestinians accordingly have nowhere to return. Essentially, to the media, he went on to say the only obvious result will be Gazans choosing to emigrate outside the Strip. But our main problem is finding countries to take them in. So that's why I said displacement, not genocide, would be a better terminology.
Gaza en masse to attempt to bring about the demise of the Gaza population, create conditions unfit for human existence by decimating civilian infrastructure, etc. Now, in terms of a policy, we can look to the Where's Daddy program that's being used by Israeli intelligence through a Lavender AI system where they spot what they suspect to be low-level Hamas operatives, bomb them when they're at home with
A report by 972 Plus magazine. I think that's the source. Plus 972 magazine alleged that the Israel Defense Force used AI systems known as Lavender and Where's Daddy to identify and track suspected Hamas members, including at their homes while they're with family. The claims are based on anonymous sources and were widely covered and re-reported. The IDF disputes key characterizations, saying AI is not used autonomously and that human review is involved in targeting decisions. I don't know what he's trying to insinuate with this. Maybe it's kind of loading the negative sentiment due to negative interpretations of what AI can be used for. AI being used in the military, I think you could say that's wrong. Does that prove his overall point of this being a genocide? No, but
their family. So what they suspect to be low-level Hamas operatives, bomb them when they're at home with their family. So you can't claim Hamas is using Palestinians as human shields when most of what Israel is actually doing is targeting who they suspect to be low-level Hamas operatives when they're with their family. This is backed up by the demographic data. Reuters pointed to the fact that over
but we know that they use human shields. He's trying to make the claim that they aren't using human shields. I feel like that's a bias, a perception, but okay.
Using Palestinians as human shields when most of what Israel is actually doing is targeting who they suspect to be low-level Hamas operatives when they're with their family. This is backed up by the demographic data. Reuters pointed to the fact that over 1,300 families' bloodlines have been wiped out in Gaza. Sometimes as much as 4 generations of Palestinian families are being wiped out. Sometimes as large as 14 members of a Palestinian family is being wiped out. So again, we have policy, and then we look to the effects. 65.
Your policy doesn't prove your claim. That was just like trying to morally load your position without using evidence to substantiate it. You brought out this action of potentially using AI to go after Hamas agents, and then you added your own assumptions into there without proof. And then the idea of like families getting wiped out. I mean, of course, civilians are dying. So again, you're just using a moral argument to prove a semantical, definitional argument. Semantics is not a bad thing, by the way. Semantics is important when having a conversation. Do I think understanding the definition of genocide in a conversation like this, is it important? I don't personally think so. I think understanding the term and definition of genocide is important for scholars to like categorize different atrocities, like I said before. But if we're just talking about like the destruction and the humanity and the killings that's taken place, whether you call it a genocide or not doesn't really mean anything because people's lives are still getting taken away. So having this semantical argument honestly doesn't mean anything to me. If you want to call it a genocide, that's perfectly fine to me because I know what you're trying to do. And I know where the feelings come from. Now, of course, if you're bad faith and try to equivocate this to what the Nazis do, then I do think at that point we're doing something else entirely. I'll leave it at that.
Doctors wrote in the New York Times in a guest opinion essay, doctors that are observing in Gaza, they're participating, they're volunteering in Gaza. We don't have international journalists in Gaza, so the extent to which our international testimonies are often from these doctors, paramedics, and nurses. What they described.
So let
over-
me
Sure,
answer.
sure,
You said a lot of things.
Yeah,
right?
sure, go for it.
So first of all, I'm against the murder of any individual person living in Gaza. I see Palestinians as my family, as my cousins. If I see another individual who's, let's say, from America or a Palestinian, I will automatically feel more connected to a Palestinian. We have mostly the same ancestry. We're connected to the same land, and our descendants will be eternally connected to one another. So whenever I see a Palestinian innocent life taken, that is a horrible tragedy. But you got something wrong from the very beginning. That genocide is the intent to eliminate a population. Now, you might not be successful.
So-
they were not successful in many cases with Nazi Germany, with the Armenian, but it was the intent to try to eliminate the population. Now,
So can I ask you then?
Let me.
Do you think that the Bosnian Serb army did not commit genocide in Serbia? Or
I think if the
Bosnia?
And then we do this one trick is like, oh, are you undermining this conflict because they didn't intend to get rid of them? See, I got you. And it's not. This is. It's not really getting to the point of the conversation. Again, I don't really see a value of making the semantical differences in a day-to-day conversation. But if we're having a political discussion over what things are and getting to the minutia of things, and we're doing it in good faith, then of course this matters. But in a Jubilee environment, I don't think it does, because I don't believe any of these guys are able to engage in a proper political conversation personally.
Intent was to eliminate the entire population, then it would be a genocide. If the intent is to kill a lot of people in order to do ethnic cleansing, which is another thing, which is also problematic. Okay, but
so you're saying it's ethnic cleansing, not genocide.
No, I'm not saying what's going on is ethnic cleansing. I'm saying that there are individual politicians who support the idea of removing Palestinians.
I'm not talking about individual politicians. I'm talking about Benjamin Netanyahu,
which would be ethnic cleansing, and I'm against that.
And you agree that the quote I cited earlier would be the intent for ethnic cleansing, right?
The way that you sourced it would be, but I don't think that that's actually what he said.
That's from Times of Israel.
We should fact check it and see the whole entire context.
Okay, yeah, fact check it.
If we find
Times of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu quote.
Find that Bibi Netanyahu has the intent to remove all the Palestinians from Gaza, I am against it.
And you would say that's ethnic cleansing?
That would be ethnic cleansing.
Okay.
The ethnic cleansing. Let's get a definition for that. Definition of ethnic cleansing. I can give my intuition or my generalized understanding based off contextual conversations. Well, we are on the internet. Might as well look this up. So this is what Wikipedia says. Ethnic cleansing is the systematic forced removal of ethnic, racial, or religious groups from a given area with the intent of making the society ethnically homogeneous. Well, Israel is not ethnically homogeneous. So I don't think this is ethnic cleansing. I mean, do they have... Is Palestinian? There's Palestinians in Israel, right? Is there Palestinians in Israel? And then there's Palestinians in the West Bank. Yeah, there is. I mean, I don't think ethnic cleansing is the right term either, because they would have gotten rid of the Palestinians in Israel and in the West Bank, but they're not. That's why I say displacement doesn't rely on the race and ethnic part. They're just trying to get rid of all the people in Gaza. I think that's just a more fair characterization and probably more accurate at the same time.
Okay, great. So
now that we're agreeing that there's a difference between ethnic cleansing and genocide, and that I'm against both, let's talk about the claim of it being genocide. Now, when we look at 2.2 million people living in Gaza, and max number is 70,000 by Hamas records, which we know Hamas is constantly lying of how many people are dying. For 70,000 people to have died, also this is in the past 2 years, there are 5,000 people who are dying from natural causes every year, which is also included. The Hamas number,
the natural causes are not included. That's false. If natural causes were included,
Hamas number,
the natural causes are not.
The Gaza Health Ministry does not break down deaths by specific cause and does not separately classify combatants from civilians. As of early 2026, reports over 72,000 Palestinians killed since October 7. Al Jazeera cites research suggesting the toll exceeds 75,000.
Included. That's false. If natural causes were included, you would see excess death among youth and among elderly. You don't see that with the demographic data. The demographic data is actually directly from Israeli airstrikes.
No, it's directly from Hamas.
It's the Gaza Ministry of Health, which has been reliable.
Which is Hamas.
Okay, they've been reliable in every other armed
that
conflict.
seeks to kill civilians is giving you your information.
Why doesn't the Israeli military, if the Israeli military was operating under the laws of war, they would know how many Palestinian civilians have died. Why don't they?
Well, It's hard to say that the Israel just because the attacking force is attacking, they would know how many people are dying. That's not how that works. Okay.
Being killed, only 70,000
Hey,
to the
pause.
max
Rudy,
number.
pause.
That is a small amount of people and
Hey,
very
Rudy.
clearly not a genocide.
Rudy, we've got flags up. You've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
The important thing for this conversation is one, understanding, are we doing the semantic points? The guy before didn't really care about definitions. He was generalizing to prove his moral point. So he wasn't interested in the semantics. And I think that is fine not to be interested in semantics, but just make it clear, make it understood. What I'm here to do is to call it this because of the moral circumstances, not because of the definitional argument. I think it's fine to just make that concession on both sides of the aisle. I think it's okay.
Hello.
Salam.
Shalom.
How are you?
Comment allez-vous?
Très bien.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Comment nishmacha?
Baruch Hashem, how are you?
Very
Alhamdulillah.
good. For a moment, I wanted to believe that you really wanted peace. For a moment, I really almost believed that you wanted the Palestinians to go back to Palestine. But then when you ridiculed and you belittled 70,000 deaths, and you're saying that's just a small percentage for 1.2 million, that is outrageous.
That is not what I said.
That's what I've heard you saying.
No, what I said is it's not a genocide, because if it was a genocide, we'd see the intent and the
If-
actual murder of a lot of people. And
For
I
the
started.
death, for the death of
I started with one person dying. That's Palestinian is horrible. Okay, so
So-
remember everything that I said. Palestinians
will-
are my family. If any Palestinian dies, that's horrible.
See,
But if we're
what
talking about
we are
intent,
seeing
it's
right now,
different.
what we're seeing right now is, and I hope I'm wrong, is a great act.
You are
Sadly,
wrong.
Again, this is what all these conversations boil down to. You want me to fall into your kind of moral argument. That's fine, but you also need to understand the semantical argument I'm making. And the reason why people have the semantical argument is to understand very clear and distinctive like legal definitions of what this term is. Also, they also want to ensure that what is going on is properly characterized. Because if you morally load it, which I understand, there is the potentiality of very generalized comparisons. When people hear genocide, they're going to think of Nazi Germany. That's just what's going to happen. So let's be on the same page that this is not Nazi Germany. That's not what's going on. Is it okay? No, which is why I understand your passion. But in order to solve what is going on, we also have to understand the actions and the intent. So that's why it's like that's what this conversation is getting boiled down to, and I don't think anybody up here is going to be willing to engage with that properly. But this guy already failed. Why? Let's say so. Let's see.
Please return to your seat.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. So, I'm actually half Lebanese, and you probably can't tell. The reason is because my mom's from Taiwan, which explains why I look like Bruce Lee's gay son. But that's neither here nor there. The first time I was exposed to what Israel was capable of was the summer of 2006, the 33-day war in Lebanon. There was a firefight that took place between the southern border and northern border of Israel-Lebanon. Hezbollah snuck it over. They killed 8 IDF soldiers, kidnapped 2 of them, hoping that they would get 4 Lebanese prisoners in return. And how did Israel respond? They decided to blanketly carpet bomb the airports, highways, block the port, civilian infrastructure. One of those was my aunt's home. She's not a Hezbollah member. She doesn't live in a military base. And I also remember at that time, my cousins were vacationing in Lebanon, and they told me horror stories about how they were trapped in a basement as hellfire's raining on them. There was no electricity because Israel had bombed the power stations there. They had little water and fuel because Israel had shut off the water and fuel supply. Does this sound familiar? And not only that, they had a friend of theirs whose grandmother was being transported from the south to the north in an ambulance, a marked ambulance with the sirens blaring off to escape the bombing that was going on in the south. And it got blown up. It got attacked. The IDF denied that it happened. So in that war birthed what's known as the Dahia Doctrine. Even the IDF general at the time, Eisenkot, had said, we will apply destructive force and it doesn't matter. Everything a civilian village is a military base. And this is what we're seeing today in Gaza is the Dahia Doctrine on steroids. And there is intent to push them out. There wasn't genocide in Gaza because they weren't trying to push out the Lebanese out of Lebanon, but they are doing that in Palestine.
Okay. So even though this is not a conversation about Lebanon, we can talk about that as well, because it's obviously related to Israel, and the PLO were very much so involved during that war, and along with Hezbollah and a lot of different issues that was happening in Lebanon. If you want to go into a country that you're about to go to war with, because Hezbollah is constantly shooting rockets onto Israel, attacking Israeli civilians, killing Israelis, so is the PLO with a lot of terrorism. Hold up,
what year?
If they're doing that at that time, okay, then the first thing you need to do is to remove the transportation capabilities of the other army, to remove the airports in order to be able to take out Hezbollah and to end the war. What you're all saying of the horrible stuff that happened, that I'm sorry you had any family member that passed away. Palestinians are my close cousins, but other Arabs are also my cousins. We both descend from Ibrahim, from Ishmael and Yitzhak, so we're all family in this region, and it's horrible what happens to war. The conversation we need to have now is what can we do to remove that and to stop us from happening? Because the consequences
You
of
can
us
stop
using
collectively punishing the civilian
You said
population.
you, I'm not you.
Pause here. Their flags are up. You've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
One thing that I would change from this is allowing the point to at least be finished. Allowing the point to be finished, that is all I ask.
Good, how are you?
So yeah, we got nothing out of that because everybody just fucking got him out of there.
Not bad. I want to talk about your claim, which is that Israel's not committing a genocide in Gaza. Earlier, during one of the previous debaters, you said that the definition of genocide was to eliminate a population. Is that still your definition?
Correct.
Okay, so you recognize that that is not the definition of genocide.
That is mostly the definition of genocide.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you want to know what the full definition of genocide is?
And you're going to say
It's the-
intent, right?
Yeah, of course, that's
Okay,
part
so-
of it.
so
But
exactly.
that's not the qualm I have. It's the intent to destroy a population in whole or in part.
Mhm.
Okay, so you use the evidence of Israel not killing more Palestinians as evidence that it's not a genocide. But the Germans didn't kill every Jewish person. You agree that there was genocide against Jewish people? Not
They intended to kill all the Jews. Like what? I mean, if they're gonna make a claim that there's an intent to kill all the Palestinians, then at this point there's no way I can bridge this gap. Because you can't prove this claim. The obviously the circumstantial data and the evidence can't prove this claim. And we can't really find a solution because now we're doing the equivocation and comparing them to Nazi Germany. And when people do that, you can understand why all of them just want Israel gone. They just see them as the second coming of the Nazis. But the situations are so clearly different that they're incomparable. Doesn't excuse what Israel is doing. I want to get rid of all of Netanyahu and the far right of the Israel government with American pressure, of course, but these are different circumstances.
Intent of Israel was not to kill in parts the Palestinians
Okay.
either. That is why it's not a genocide, not
what
in whole or in
evidence?
part.
And okay,
Every action that Israel does is to prevent
let me
civilian
just ask you a
casualties
question.
from being
Okay,
killed.
how do you adjudicate whether a government intends to eliminate in part or in whole a population?
Right. So if every time that there's an attack against a Hamas site, not against a civilian area that doesn't have Hamas, but specifically a Hamas site that is shooting rockets onto Israeli civilians, and Israel does everything to warn the population there to leave by phone calls, by text messages, by leaflets, sometimes sent 72 hours before, we can see the intent here is to minimize civilian casualties.
And just to be clear,
So this is an example of what Israel
Right.
does in order to not
Yeah,
have civilians
no,
die
I
at
understand.
large or as parts.
I understand. Just to be clear, the reason
You understand, but you weren't listening. You just wanted to respond. But okay, let's hear it. Maybe you have a good response. Let me hear it.
reason you're saying that is because if they didn't do this, which by the way, this is it's actually a funny standard that you give to Israel, that if they drop leaflets before bombing somebody, that they are proactive and that they're trying to save civilian life. That's actually required by international law. So it's the bare minimum.
Yes, it's required. That's why it's not a genocide. You're proving his point. Yes, you have to do this. Of course, you have to do this because you want to ensure that civilians get the proper notice so they can get out of there. Yes, that's the point. There's not the intention to just kill all the civilians. That's the point. But all right.
And,
I just
and
want to
it's
make
proof
clear.
that
I just
they're
want to make
warning
clear.
people before
If they
attacking.
didn't do that,
Right.
you would say that, well, clearly that's intent to kill civilians, right?
Not necessarily, but
Okay,
it's,
so wait.
No,
so,
hold
so
up,
then
let me
why
answer.
no, because that's
if there's
important.
a
because that is-
firefight, okay, and in
Go
the
ahead.
moment there's no ability to send leaflets or warning, and people get killed in the process, then there are situations where not warning doesn't make
Okay.
it a genocide. So here's an example when certain situations,
Go
I know
ahead.
that you're college and you're on media and everything else, but I actually went to war. So there's certain situations that develop live where Hamas pops out of nowhere, starts shooting at IDF soldiers. There's a gunfight. There are people who are civilians who are killed, and that is not a genocide because they didn't warn. That's why not warning doesn't make it a genocide either.
This
If
is
the
not what I'm
intent is to
discussing.
kill people,
That's
then
not what I'm
it is a
discussing.
genocide.
I'm assuming that you're talking about when safe zones are bombed, when refugee camps are bombed, leaflets
Well,
are
safe
dropped,
zones are safe
which
before
shows
Hamas
that-
entered, and then they're no longer safe, correct?
Wait, which shows that Israel's not trying to commit a genocide, right? If you made that point that Israel is dropping leaflets, which shows that they're not intending to commit a genocide, supposedly
Okay, so he just didn't listen to anything he said, and he just waited to respond. This. We're not getting anywhere. You're not interested. Why are you here if you're not interested in talking? That's what makes this format so frustrating. Because he it sounds like he's trying to do some gotcha thing here. Let me see how he
If they didn't drop leaflets, that would be showing intent to commit a genocide.
False. I
Then
just
there's-
explained why that's
then
the
there's
case. There are situations that
then your
happen
point,
live.
Then your point. This is. I don't know how well versed you are in debate. That's called a fallacy of infallibility.
This
If
is
your
called-
Oh my god. Motherfuckers be learning fallacy, the term fallacy from watching Andrew Wilson's bitch ass and think they know how to debate. Like, bro, what? Debate is about responding to points. It's not about these coin terms that you learn from a random YouTuber who thinks they know how to debate. Like, what are we doing?
if your position cannot be proven wrong, then it is an illegitimate argument to make.
I've proven
But
how none of you finished that point. No, you
because this is
finished that
important.
point, and I'm
Because
gonna
let me-
respond.
you can-
If Israel
I will
does
give you
everything that it
examples.
can
I will
to
give you
prevent
You have to respond to hit. You said something. You try to create this weird trap. It's like, oh, so you're saying if they don't notify them in circumstances, then it is a genocide. Then he was like, no, that's not what I'm saying, because there are circumstances that, certain situations, whether during a firefight where the combat is like right immediate, where Hamas is attacking you, that you have to do whatever you got to do, and civilians could be in the crosshair, or certain safe zones. He explained, no, there are circumstances where that's not the case if danger arises to that point, especially if civilians are in the area, which typically is the case regarding Gaza because it's so jam-packed. And he's like, I don't care you said that. I'm going to go back to my argument so I can win this debate point. It's like, what are we doing?
civilian casualties. That is a proof that shows that his intention is not to kill Palestinian civilians. Do Palestinian civilians get killed?
I'm going to give you an
there?
example.
No, I'm going to
give you an example. No, you want to finish your point.
Of course,
you want
I'm
to
going
finish your point because you've interrupted me, and you don't want me to say
your claim. And now I'm gonna...
It's not about interruption. It's responding to points. You want to do your gotcha thing, but he responded to you, but you're not responding to him. People, clip culture and stupid debate bros on the internet have ruined the capacity of what political conversation is supposed to be about. To be fair, also a lot of political debates like that I see from different politicians are also dog shit. We need better representation of political conversation.
Do you want to hear Al-Mawasi as an example of a refugee camp being bombed without leaflets being
to respond to your point.
By your own standards.
By your own standards. By the world standards, they're not.
Here's something most people don't think about until it's too late. My wife and I.
Shout out you, my boy. All right. How did I think the genocide conversation went? Not well. They couldn't get past definitions. It's just when it comes down to definitions, there is one side that wants to just use like the moral argument. The other one was using the legal semantical argument, and there was no bridging and not wanting to kind of meet each other in the middle. Next one, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. I disagree. I think you can be anti-Zionist and not be anti-Semitic. I understand why Zionism was created. I don't believe Zionism is necessary in the 2026 era, personally. I'm not a fan of like countries ruled by religion. That's just me. I don't believe in it. But I'm not anti-Semitic. I think being anti-Semitic is cringe. Now, if he makes the argument that people who call themselves anti-Zionist are just cosplaying being anti-Semitic, then I agree. But he has to make that argument.
And distract from the focal point. We are opposed to an occupation imposed on the occupied people. If I'm opposed to that occupation, I'm opposed to the ideology of that occupation, which is Zionism. Therefore, I'm not against the people that supposedly tie themselves to that identity. I'm against said identity. So if I'm against Zionism, it should be very clear I'm against anyone who supports it, whether they're Jewish or not, because you mentioned Christian Zionism. You're obviously opposed to that. So am I, because I'm not about this person or that person. If there was a Muslim Zionist, I would be opposed to them. It's the ideology, not the person. And the actual, in my opinion, most Zionists are Christians, Christian Zionists. Yes, you can go ahead. But all of this is a smokescreen to distract from the focal point.
It's very sad that you have so much pain in your heart and have gone through so much that someone speaking in front of you that actually has compassion and is genuine in front of you have to see it as tactics or that there's an objective or that there's a motive. There isn't. Okay, I see you as my family, like I've said before. These are not just these are not talk because we need to hear it over and over and over because we're denying it and we're rejecting it. Like I've said before, these are not just.
This is the problem. He's like, I'm trying to be compassionate. I'm trying to show you love, and he's like, I don't give a fuck. This is the problem here. My issue oftentimes is people who are attacking Israel and for what they're doing, deservingly so, are also not trying to apply that moral understanding and charity to Israelis or Jews on why they're in the circumstance they are in the first place. They just paint them with a broad brush evil, don't take into consideration context. And this is kind of the biggest problem with a lot of people not really understanding how complicated these scenarios are, especially when we add the history of the group and the current issues going on regarding the people who are also anti-Zionist, also are not a fan of Netanyahu and the far-right government, but are also getting treated like pieces of garbage and akin to Nazis. So where's that compassion for those people? There is none. So that's why I call it very grifty, where it's like we're just following on the trend of hating Israel with not really understanding why Israel's bad, why Hamas is bad, and who are the true problematic characters and actors in this conflict.
These are not talk because we need to hear it over and over and over because we're denying it and rejecting it, and that exists on both sides. I say it to Israelis all the time. I debate Israeli extremists all the time. We need to be able to transcend. Now, let me explain why. Let me explain why Zionism is a form of anti-Semitism. Right? There are many ways that someone can be against the population, including the Jews. Hitler wanted to kill all of the Jews. Some Nazis wanted to just kick Jews out. Some Nazis wanted to have Jews there, but just give them different rights. There are different ways of being anti the Jewish people. One of the ways of being anti the Jewish people is to be against the idea and the movement of our right to live in our ancestral homeland.
Who determines that, right? Why do you have the exception to say, I have a right to do this, I have a right to do that? Like, where does that exception come from? Why do you have
the indigenous argument of any indigenous people's rights to self-determination? Which is part of the smoke. It's not debunked. It's actually been proven. A lot of people even here claim to be Jewish, and you know your ancestors are Jews as well, from that land. We come from the civilization, both of us, the Jewish people are indigenous. That is the civilization you actually descend from, and you opted out by either converting to Christianity or Islam, or Arabized over time, and have another identity that was created,
which is not me, my ancestors that I can't speak to.
60%
maybe they were Canaanite, maybe they were this, maybe they were that. That doesn't matter.
Palestinian ancestry, according to genetic studies that have been done over the decades, shows that they descend from the Jewish population. And in cities like Yatta, Yafo, Tzfat, Hebron, Shrem.
Peer-reviewed studies in Nature, Cell, and the American Journal of Human Genetics find that Palestinian and Jewish populations share significant and ancient Levantine ancestry, showing genetic continuity with people living in the region during the Bronze and Iron Ages. However, the research does not conclude that Palestinians simply descend from Jews, or that both groups trace overlapping roots to earlier populations of the region. Yeah, I don't know how he can say with confidence this has been debunked. This argument of, this land belongs to me is the biggest bullshit argument you can make regarding Israel-Palestine. The people have moved around so much. I just don't buy this as your right to have this land. You live here now. We understand why people were there. We understand the Palestinians were there before the establishment of any country under the rule of, Turkey, the Ottoman Empire. We understand that Jews displaced there because of World War II and a lot of killings of Jewish people. We understand that they both have historical and religious connections from this land long ago. So trying to play I was here first game is fucking stupid. It's so stupid from both sides. I just don't buy it. You guys both are there. That's why the idea of sharing the land makes the most sense. It just does.
If you go to East Jerusalem, those population of Palestinians is up to 90 to 80%. Again, like I said earlier, you can find publications like Nature, American Journal of Human Genetics, studies done by Nebel, by Hammer, by Behar. These are very clearly proven that Palestinians descend from there, and so do the Jewish people. If the Jews want to live in their ancestral homeland, that is a form of decolonization.
pause
All
here.
of this is a moot point that could be
not a
debunked
moot
with a
point.
10-second
It's
Google
not a moot
search.
point.
we gotta
Someone
pause now.
distracts
We
the
gotta
focus.
No, can, bro. What people who get their information on Twitter think that they can find that same information on Google. The information you see on Twitter, 9 times out of 10 is just lies. Actually, Google search these things.
Pause
Google
there.
is
Times
actually
are
gave all
up.
the sources.
You've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
April 2025, the IOF forces made a complete blockade. No food aid, no shelter, nothing.
Okay. Are we doing a moral argument or are we talking about anti-Zionism versus anti-Semitism? I would be up there, bro, and make the. I feel like the argument is so easy that this should be a layup on why these are not the same thing, but.
Getting into Gaza. There has been 470 people, mainly women and children, that have died from severe malnourishment, and it's expected to be 10,000 of these people who die from severe malnourishment. Has been declared a famine in Gaza. Famine. There has been journalists. This is the highest amount of journalists that we've ever seen die. 270 journalists have been targeted, killed. This is more than we've seen in World War I, World War II, the Civil War, the post 9/11 wars, all combined.
Okay, you made 2 points.
No.
Can I
This
address
is
those 2 points?
these are my points to say
Right.
this is what happens under a Zionist regime.
Okay, so this is what happens during war. If we
No,
look,
this is what happens during genocide.
I'll let you finish.
You starve a population.
I didn't do anything. Okay, don't you?
I'm
do.
sorry. You're
Okay,
the
so
Israeli
we can talk
government.
about the Israeli government.
Sure.
Right now, it's me as human beings that are
Sure.
talking about the situation.
But you
Right?
support it.
No, I don't support people being starved and people dying and
But you're
people
supporting the
suffering.
regime.
I understand why things are happening, and I'm trying to focus on that in order to change it from happening so that people don't die anymore. Not just using selecting instances of Palestinian suffering when it fits an agenda in order to manipulate that.
Selective starvation?
No, are you talking
473
about the thousands of
children and-
Palestinians that died?
It's just like comprehension. Listen to the words coming out of my mouth. I do think for this guy, unfortunately, they don't care. They see you as lesser human. This is the moral hypocrisy glitch, I dare I say, where I care about people unless you're a person I don't want to care about. So it's irritating. What this guy needs to do, articulate better, and this is something that I'm trying to do better as well, is facts in most conversations are starting to become irrelevant. And no matter how clearly wrong something is, whether morally or factually, it doesn't matter. So you need to establish why what you're saying is the best way to perceive it. It's a battle of ideals at this point, not a battle of truth. Because you have to convince them why what you're saying is in their best interest. It's a shady game, it's a sales pitch, but nowadays that is the best way to do it. And I'm trying to get better at that as well. But in your case, when you're having this conversation with this person who clearly just came up here to rattle off statistics and not address the points being made up here, you have to make it very clear. Understanding what it is important. The reason why it's important is so we know exactly what to use as ammunition to take out the evil actors in the current Israeli government. Now, I don't know if he agrees with that, but I think Netanyahu's bad. I think far-right Israelis are bad, just like Netanyahu. So you can make the reason why I want to articulate this is what it is. So when we go and criticize and tell the people what it is, we're not conflating things that are objectively wrong, but we're getting to the core of the issues to use as ammunition to kick Netanyahu out, to hold him to the fire, to maybe point a sun ray at his cancer so he can, let me chill. But that's something that's very important. Facts are very important to use against evil actors, because they can play the narrative game all along because they are not held to the truth. They don't need truth to stay in power.
The Syrian civil war, by the hundreds of
I'm
thousands
talking
of
about the people that are in
refugee camps.
Gaza
And
right now
of course,
that are
only-
not
only
having, they're
Palestinians-
living in tents.
Only
They're
Palestinians
dying from
when it
being
comes to
freezed
Israel do you
out
like
and
to talk
having
about
no,
them.
but
Why
I'm
don't you
talking
talk
about
about
these contexts
other
right
Palestinians that are
now.
suffering as well? Let's
There's
talk about,
197 buildings
let's talk about
that are
the
rubble
famine
now.
and the block of aid.
197 buildings.
The reason
have been-
why aid was blocked, which I'm not for,
Let's
is
hear it.
because Hamas was stealing all of that food. Yes, yes, yes.
Nope.
Hamas was stealing that food, killing other
So
Palestinians.
don't you think you should
and that
let
food was
more
going.
food in
No,
instead of blocking
what
it? Where's the
what
logic
I think
there?
should have been done. Here's a legitimate.
Why would you, if Hamas is stealing the food, why would you send more food? They're gonna steal more. What? What? I don't get that part. With that said, there definitely needs to be a better structure to hand out food to people. And we were doing that during the Biden administration, but the Trump administration does not give two fucks. And I don't think Israel really gives two fucks at this point either. So I think that's a proper criticism to make. Honestly, we're not even talking about Semitism and anti-Zionism. Oh, we got our boy. I think he's one of the more capable, but he's one of those both sides bad types. It's kind of annoying.
Because it was a
Videos that we have
game.
is
Okay, we
of
have to
Hamas
pause.
shooting
No,
Palestinians
pause.
yeah,
to get
okay.
aid.
It's the
There are
ISIS
plenty of
backed
videos
gangs
that are
that
happening.
Netanyahu
Guys,
has already agreed to.
Flags are up. You can vote it out.
Well, I think criticizing a regime is not criticizing identity. That was a point that was already brought up. But I have a question for you. Do you agree with the current strategy with the Board of Peace in order to bring stability to the Gaza region?
I don't.
And what
I
are some of the
don't-
criticisms that you have of that plan?
So first of all, I completely agree with you that criticizing a regime is not anti-Semitic. Like I said earlier, I don't know one Israeli that doesn't criticize the Israeli government. That's not anti-Semitism. That's not anti-Zionism either. When you're against the right for the Jewish people to live there, that's when it becomes anti-Semitic. Now, when it comes to the Board of Peace and Trump's policies and trying to create the French Riviera in Gaza and all these things, we are on the same page that this is horrible. There should be no imposition of the United States, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, or any foreign entity coming into this land. This is the land of the Israelis and the Palestinians. We have to create one civilization for both where we have equality in this land.
And so it's a democratic state, a one-state solution.
Yes, one civilization I call, because one
So
state
you
implies
don't
the
believe
current political system.
you
Which
don't
is
believe
flawed.
that
Nobody believes in a one-state solution, though. See, this is where we can finally have a real conversation. Nobody believes in a one-state solution. That's one thing. And two, hopefully he brings this up. Zionism is not about whether or not Jews live there. It's about it being a Jewish land. Why do we need the moniker of it being a Jewish land? It can be a land where mostly Jews live there, but doesn't need to be a Jewish land. Can't it be secular? Isn't it? I don't even think Israel nowadays is like led by Jewish norms, more so liberal norms, from my understanding.
Jewish, or there needs to be a Jewish identity that's central to the governance
Of course I do.
of Israel.
course
So
I do.
how could it be a democratic regime if everybody has autonomy and equal rights, if one ethnicity is prioritized
Great,
over all
great
others?
question. This is honest conversation. I'm
There
happy we're
we
having it.
go.
So first of all, they're non-negotiables for the Jews and non-negotiables for the Palestinians. For the Palestinians, it's the right of return and freedom from the river to the sea. That creates a problem to today's Jewish non-negotiables, which are full economic, political, and military control over the land. Jerusalem is the capital, and the third temple is built. Now, how are you going to have these two things that are non-negotiable for both? Well, the idea of Palestinians returning to the land makes a demographic problem and a cultural problem. Today, a lot of Palestinians hate Israelis. They wouldn't want to live in Israel.
That is such an overgeneralization. I have to stop
a
you
lot
there.
of
But
Palestinians-
just to say to the camera, what this is
lot of-
advocating for is an ethno-state that prioritizes
No,
one particular population.
No.
over-
Okay, now he's doing the oh my god, and address his points, bro. Stop moral loading. You're not Superman, bro. Stop moral loading. Have the conversation to understand his point, and then if he makes a bad point, tear it apart. Stop forcing your morals onto other people. People get tired of this shit. They get tired of this shit. You're not Martin Luther King, bro. This stuff is not simple. It's not a simple situation where it's like, let me become the hero of the Palestinians. Stop. Listen to what he's saying. Address his points, because I think there's a very good argument you can make against what he's saying right now. And I'm very curious to see, okay, there's these two non-negotiables. How are we going to arrive at peace? We're about to get there, and you were like, no, let me be Superman for fucking yo, that shit pisses me off. You're not proving anything. You're not helping anything. But raising your own credibility to be this moral warrior. Congratulations. You're the fucking cupcake.
those
now you're
already
putting
had
words
words
into
into
people's
people's
hands.
hands.
That is
I did not
exactly-
say
you
that there were
explicitly
priorities of
said-
individuals. There's a
You
there's a
explicitly said-
collective that are indigenous to the land. It will
Okay,
be.
we'll let you continue.
Yes, let me
but
finish.
I'll
okay?
actually give the truth to the
So now
camera
the
as soon as you're done with this
there's
bullshit.
16 million people, Jews in the world, right? Those are the descendants of 2.5 tribes. There are 9.5 tribes that are missing as a part of that number. We were 12 tribes once upon a time. That population today that still identifies as a part of the Jewish people are 100 million outside of the 16 million, and half of them want to make Aliyah to move to Israel. So we would have 50 million Jews coming back to the land of Israel. Palestinians also returning. A lot of things have to happen before that day happens, where we change the culture, we create freedom of speech, which does not exist in Palestinian societies. We change the structure of education, and once we have something that we can both live together, we can have our aspirations together.
It is just.
Now,
it is-
are you
it is-
Palestinian?
Can I?
And once
Wait,
we
wait,
put
wait,
2
wait.
million Jews coming, 16 million people, and it will
Okay,
be.
we'll let you continue.
Yes, let me
but
finish.
I'll
okay?
actually give the truth to the
So now
camera as soon as you're done with this
there's
bullshit.
16 million people.
Base, you're so brave. You're so brave. It's like it'd be one thing if this guy is equivalent to like Andrew Wilson, who just like is a bad faith piece of garbage. This guy is trying to have a conversation. If you can't have a conversation with this guy, who the fuck are you gonna have a conversation with on the Israeli side?
Jews in the world, right? Those are the descendants of 2.5 tribes. There are 9.5 tribes that are
Bullshit.
16 million people, Jews in the world, right? Those are the descendants of 2.5 tribes. There are 9.5 tribes that are missing as a part of that number. We were 12 tribes once upon a time. That population today that still identifies as a part of the Jewish people are 100 million outside of the 16 million, and half of them want to make Aliyah to move to Israel. So we would have 50 million Jews coming back to the land of Israel. Palestinians also returning. A lot of things have to happen before that day happens, where we change the culture, we create freedom of speech, which does not exist in Palestine.
See, this is a point. This is a perfect opportunity to nail him on a point, to see what exactly he thinks. Changing the culture, changing all this stuff, bringing all these people into one is all fine and dandy, but we are not addressing the non-negotiables. We're not addressing the need for it to be a Jewish state, and we're not addressing the need for Palestinians to return to their homeland. We're not addressing these core points. You're just outlining some hopeful rhetoric. This is a perfect time to criticize this point right here. Perfect opportunity.
In societies, we change the structure of education, and once we have something that we can both live together, we can have our aspirations together.
It is just.
Now,
it is-
are you
it is-
Idealistic and not really embedded into the reality of what we're talking about right now. Let me see if he's able to do exactly what I was referring to.
Palestinian?
Can I
I'm
continue?
just asking
talking?
one question. I want to understand. Who
I'm
speaking
not
to.
Palestinian, no, and I don't believe that identity gives credibility to those
No, it
arguments.
shows
I
if
think
someone
that
speaking as
it
a fan or
definitely-
as a player.
No, whoa, a fan.
Or a player. Are you pro-Palestinian or are you Palestinian?
I don't think that we should view this as a fucking
No,
sports
just-
game,
I-
dude.
again,
I'm sorry,
you're using
I'm
profanities.
sorry,
Yeah,
to
it's not a
sorry.
sports game.
I can recognize an atrocity when I see it because I believe
Is
what
it
my eyes are
October
telling
7th
me.
an atrocity?
I believe that any innocent life that has died is
Is
something
October
that
7th an atrocity?
any innocent life that
You can
dies
answer that
needs to be
question.
condemnable.
So much for recognizing atrocities.
I just said any
Say
innocent life that
October
dies
7th
needs to
was
be
an atrocity.
condemnable. All I'm saying is it is an insane point to say that.
Yo, I'm gonna be honest. He got you. He got you with the gotcha. He said, I can recognize atrocity. Is October 7th an atrocity? You don't just say yes. It's not a simple yes out of your mouth. That's that moral hypocrisy glitch that I'm talking about. It's a glitch where it's like my morals can't translate to other beings that I already deem not morally allowed because they're not human to me. I don't need a generalized statement to say, oh, any time life is dead. No, answer the question. Is October 7th a atrocity? Yes. Then you can say it. You know who does that strategy? Like, oh, what about sometimes I think faster than I talk, and I don't say certain things. You know who else does it? MAGA does it. They do it all the time. They do this thing like, we're all bad. They're all bad. Hey, what happened with Trump? What about, I don't like when Trump did that, but what about this? The whole thing and conflating certain things to minimize the circumstance that we're talking about.
Being anti-Zionism means you're anti-Semitic because you're spitting in the face of Jewish voices for Palestine. You're spitting in the face of Jewish voices for peace. All of these are people that recognize their identity as Jewish people that can also call out atrocities when they see it because they don't believe that just because they have a shared ethnicity means they need to endorse an ethno-state that is brutally killing people indiscriminately. They can recognize when they see something that is a human rights failure and advocate against that. What I want to make clear real quick, and I'll let you speak. I will conclude.
And I'll let you respond after to your next claim. Okay. There are populations within all peoples that turn against their own. There are individual
so Jewish
Palestinians.
voices
Let me
for
finish.
Palestine
Yes.
are turning against their own.
There are tokens who side with their oppressors
There we
in
go.
order to try to be accepted in the modern world.
How is Palestinians oppressing Israelis when
I mean,
Israel's controlling the
they
region?
side with the world that hates the Jewish people and hates Israel and are attacking it in
Israel
order
is
to be
the only
accepted.
military in
order
the
to be
Middle East
accepted
that is
in
backed by the most
and I'm
powerful
against
regime in
US
the
foreign
entire
aid.
world. So what are you
Actually, they're
talking about?
supporting also Egypt and they're supporting other places because the intent of the United States is to create conflict in that region and to profit so that you and your country can go and profit over here because that money goes straight to US weapon companies, which I'm against.
Okay,
I
we
do
got
not
to
want the
pause.
involvement
We
of
have
the
to pause. We've got flags up. You return to your seat.
There was substance to get there, but we're all playing the moral game, man. He can be attacked. There's gems there, but all your arguments are fucking dog shit. So you're not attacking the stuff you should be attacking here. Because I think that conversation started to really leak out some Israeli bias. Now, some things that I think there's some validity, but there is some Israeli bias there that I think you could have picked apart, but you weren't able to because you're playing the moral hypocrisy glitch.
So I want to do something. I want to start with good faith. Okay. This issue gets all of us heated. I can recognize that, me, myself included. So I'm not trying to do a gotcha. I'm not trying to be offensive. I want to first recognize that you are someone who is separate from the, precondition of Israeli rhetoric of never, ever recognizing Palestinian identity or existence. I think you're doing it in a strategic way, but I want to recognize that you have moved the bar a little bit. So that's commendable to an extent. But you fail to recognize the pain that's not in front of your face.
Let's be good faith, but what do you call it when you do these like subtle jabs at people? Forget what the term is.
You say you see your Palestinian, comrades, your cousins that are sitting here, but not the ones over there. So your claim was
I see
anti-Zionism.
the ones there too.
Okay, anti-Zionism is, I'm going to make my claim. You said anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. But you constantly come back to this idea that people who are anti-Zionist.
Passive-aggressive comments. Her passive-aggressive comments. I'm trying to come in good faith, but let me be passive-aggressive.
Don't want Jews to be in Israel. But that's not what anti-Zionism is.
That's what Zionism
I'm
means.
not finished with my claim. Anti-Zionism is that Jews should not have supremacy when they are there.
That's not what anti-Zionism means.
And when you're discussing anti-Semitism, what I really struggle with, and I want to bring up
Zionism is not. It's just like the need for a Jewish-led state. We don't need to add all these other terms. We don't need to add a. Did she say oppression? Hold on.
Are there.
That's not what
So
anti-Zionism means.
my claim. Anti-Zionism is that Jews should not have supremacy when they are there.
That's not what
So
Supremacy. I don't know what supremacy means. Okay, continue.
Zionism means.
and when you're discussing anti-Semitism, what I really struggle with, and I want to bring up Peter Beinart. I don't know if you're familiar with him,
I am.
but he is a Jewish scholar, and I really recognize that he is doing something important, which is bringing the voice back to why Jews should be against this in the first place, and why when they're not, it creates conditions of anti-Semitism. I believe your efforts are more anti-Semitic because you're creating a monolith of the Jews. You are saying Jews are never capable of committing such violence.
Did I say
Jews are
that?
always the victim. In the book of Esther,
Yes.
when Purim, the celebration of Purim.
You're generalizing them, so let me generalize you. Base strategy. He never said that. That just never came out of his mouth. Like, I think there are things to criticize here, but at least criticize things that he says. It's like, what are we doing here? These strategies are so fucking weak, and it's so annoying, and it pisses me off when we do this conflation game. We generalize arguments to make them as bad faith as possible. I came here good faith, by the way. Come on, bro. What are we doing?
Right?
Mhm.
Can we recognize that 75,000 Gentiles were killed by the Jews? Did Jews commit that atrocity?
No.
They didn't. So this
No.
wasn't in the book of Esther. This didn't happen?
No, the Jews did not commit
Okay,
atrocities.
because Jews are not capable of committing atrocities.
Jewish individuals are capable, of course.
What
but
about
the
a Jewish
collective
collective?
isn't.
So Israel is not a Jewish collective.
So Jewish people did this. Hey. You're anti-Semitic because you generalize Jews. So let me generalize Jews too. Oh my goodness. I don't even want to. The problem here is anytime these 1v20 things happen, I tend to side with the one because they're just better at making arguments than the 20. The 20 tends to have like fucking dog shit arguments and dog shit points. Now, I understand why they're making the arguments they are. She's trying to make these arguments to morally condemn this guy, saying, you're morally reprehensible. I'm going to come into this conversation acting like I am the reasonable one. I am the good faith one. And I'm going to shape you. I'm going to create a narrative for you on why you're the bad one. Like, I understand what she's doing, and I understand the emotions here, because her lens is anytime you defend Israel, then you're a bad person. And I'm doing a generalization too, but I think I have more evidence to what my generalization, why my generalization makes sense here. The problem is you guys are not listening to what he's saying and addressing his points. You want something, you want a concession, but if he doesn't concede certain things, you're just going to do the moral hypocrisy glitch. There are points to attack here, people. Attack the weird inconsistency he was having about the non-negotiables and how we're going to change the culture. I don't know what the fuck that means. Attack that. Attack the weird inconsistency about how the Israel... Oh, shit. What did he say? He said something about the countries around are all like antagonistic to Israel, not really like understanding why they're antagonistic to it. Well, not the why, but there's the perception of Israel is bad for a reason. And he's not acknowledging that reason. And that point, you could say he's playing victim. Like, there are very specific things to attack, but they're not attacking.
But you just keep saying that Israel is a Jewish collective. It's not.
Israel is the country of the Jewish people.
Okay.
Would it be hypothetically capable of doing something wrong? Absolutely. Has it also done other things wrong? Yes. I'm not talking about that the state is not capable of doing things that are wrong.
Do you recognize that when you say every Israeli criticizes the Israeli government?
Correct. To show that criticism is not anti-Semitism.
But here's the issue.
So you're not criticizing, you're demonizing.
In Israel, a Jewish person can say, I don't believe in God. But if you want to be part of the Knesset, you cannot be anti-Zionist. So you can't actually question the system from within. You cannot question the structure.
So anti-Semitism, there are 3 Ds in order to recognize them when it comes to Israel. If you demonize the Jewish people, if you delegitimize our existence,
every person
and if you're
would,
holding a double standard,
I'm making an assumption. I might be wrong. Every person here looks like they're anti-Zionist.
I let you communicate. I'm going to address the actual point, which is the claim that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. If you're trying to delegitimize the Jewish people's right and claim to the land and existence, if you're trying to demonize us and make us seem as monsters and take out all context to make it seem as Israel's the worst thing in the world and now connected to other problems in the world, if you're trying to hold a double standard where you care about some Palestinians but not all Palestinians, you are an anti-Semite.
I wasn't going to get passionate. I did. So I'll apologize for that. I'll come back. I want to address that. Don't move forward. I want to address it.
No, I'm not moving forward. I'm finishing the point. Zionism is the idea. This is why definitions are important.
Yeah, this whole strategy of trying to make yourself the reasonable one, that shit failed on its head immediately. It just didn't work. It didn't work.
Zionism comes towards Zion, which is Jerusalem, and the idea that we have a right to return and self-determine on this ancestral homeland. To be against this idea, to be anti-Zionism, is against the idea that the Jewish people should have a right to self-determine. That is anti-Semitic. Now, if you're against...
Now, this is the perfect opportunity, and people say I pause too much. I'm sorry. I'm not. When it comes down to it, this is a perfect point to attack. Self-determination, what does that mean? Is it necessary in 2026? This is your country, just like America's my country for now. Does it need the Jewish identity to still be your country? Like, there are things to attack there. I'm not a fan of religion being the arbiter of a country, because it creates a lot of very uneven results. But
certain policies the government is doing, the treatment of Palestinians, the suffering of Palestinians, that is not anti-Zionism. That is being pro-Palestinian talking. We have to differentiate those points. When I'm saying that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, is by defining Zionism. And you know who gets to define Zionism? The Jewish collective, the Jewish people. And if you're going to source me individual Jews that you can hold on a handful, who unfortunately, due to the trauma that we face and the generational trauma that has been projected onto our people, then end up siding with an oppressive world that always blames the Jewish people for all problems, that is not a source of reference. There are individual Palestinians who also hate all the Palestinians, and they're not the people I'm going to source to talk for the Palestinian people.
I want to identify something. In your claim, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism.
Yes.
I'm going to make an assumption that every person around us is an anti-Zionist. here, can you identify one anti-Semitic rhetoric that someone has said?
There's delegitimization of our identity saying, oh, no, it was originally the Canaanites. It wasn't the Jews. You guys aren't the real Jews. You guys are converts. All anti-Semitic points. Then there's demonization. Oh, you guys are monsters and you kill indiscriminately. You carpet bomb. Then there's holding double standards where you don't care about actual genocides happening in the world. You don't care about Palestinians dying in other cases. You only care about using them when they can be used as Israel. That is called anti-Semitism.
So what you have just done is identify all of the things that everyone has done
The
around you.
anti-Semitic points.
Okay. And you are
I'm gonna be honest. He kind of cooked. I'm just giving a stat. He kind of cooked there. I don't agree. I don't think anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And I'm upset that nobody else here is able to make a good point on why that's not. They're not really trying to, they're not really establishing the differences. And the differences is very clear. Like anti-Semitic, you hate Jews because of the identity of Jew. Like it's very similar to racism. Anti-Zionism is just not the belief that of the state being ran by Judaism. And people are just not hammering that point. These are very clearly two different things. It's just the belief that religion being in charge of a state is not good. And I hold that principle all across the board. I'm very anti-Christian nationalist, for example. I just wish people were making better points in regards to that stuff in particular and be very negative towards anti-Semitism where people are just killing Jews just to kill Jews. But having a state where the majority of Jews live and it's their state, that's fine. Doesn't need to be ran through the Jewish identity. And then, of course, there's an other concern of like this kind of manifest destiny type of rhetoric that we've been hearing from certain parts of the Israeli government where they want to expand in places like the West Bank. And I'm sure they want to expand in places in Gaza. And can I say with confidence they don't want to expand in places in Lebanon too? No, I can't say that with confidence. Not at all. So there are easy things to attack here. Nobody here is attacking it, and it's frustrating me.
recognizing that something has been done wrong to you. Can anyone around us say that Rudy is doing something wrong to us? Yes,
Sure,
they can.
if I did,
but,
sure.
but they're not putting this label on you that because of that, then all your points fail.
No, I'm not.
You
I'm
have
not
the
condemning
sense.
the
You
points. There are
have the
points that
sense
we
that
agree
people
on.
are being anti.
There are points that we
We've
agree
got
on.
flags up. You've been voted out by the majority. Please return.
Doctor.
Let me give it to you. You're a good debater. There's no doubt about that. You've been trained very well to talk about this by yourself. But this is the problem. The problem is that you're trying to give yourself the right to define what's Zionism, and you're not giving us the right to define what do we mean by being anti-Zionists. When we say we're anti-Zionist, we do not present any hatred toward any Jews or any Jewish people or any community. We're trying to say we're against what the Israeli government is doing. That's what we mean. So if we
My cheese are still. I eat too much during the weekends. I need to stop eating fast food, bro. Because I'll be grinding the gym all week, and then weekends I eat fast food, and my cheek gets puffy. Very bad, very bad. Not Picasso.
we're going to try to fight for hours to define what do you mean by Zionism, what do I mean by anti-Zionism. What we're trying to say is that the Israeli government, that you're part of it, part of the IDF, part of the Israeli community, that you're defending what they're doing.
I'm not part
We
of that.
are completely against what this government is doing. You're trying to defend what they're doing in Gaza. You're
No,
trying
I'm
to
not trying to
justify and give excuses. That's outrageous for us. We don't accept that.
So, Doctor, you did something that's very important that I think that we can transcend the conversation is by understanding what we're saying rather than terms. The reason why I'm saying that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism is because I'm giving a very specific definition of Zionism, which is the official definition and the definition that historically was and currently is that the Jewish people.
So that's not what we mean.
Exactly. This is why we need to have a conversation of what do you truly mean. When I say I'm a Zionist, I'm not talking about suffering of Palestinians. I want Palestinians to be able to return. I want Palestinians
your
to be able to
actions
live.
are louder
No,
than
my
your words.
actions are actually working to that. I work with Palestinian leaders in Gaza and in the West Bank to actually change the situation.
You are
My
blaming
actions-
Palestinians for what's happening in Gaza.
I'm not blaming Palestinians
You-
for what's
you
happening.
just
in Gaza.
said that.
I actually
The reason-
blame the U.S. government for their foreign aid. I blame the British for what they
Now,
did into our country.
do you-
And I would like to see us being able to transcend. But what you are doing is so important.
See, this is why none of you guys can compete with this dude right now. You guys are not listening to what he's saying and are making up his points. You hear some buzzwords and then create a whole conclusion, and then everything else goes one ear out the other. It's one of the most frustrating things. To be fair, not everybody's paying attention here. They just want to get up there and debate, I guess, whatever. But if I'm there, I'm listening to everything you're saying and addressing everything you're saying. But that's just me, though.
because everyone who's listening can realize we need to understand what we're actually saying. If you're
So-
condemning the suffering of Palestinians, that is not being anti-Zionist. And if you're miscommunicating that and Israelis are hearing you saying I'm anti-Zionist, let's ask you what you truly mean by that. And if we mean different things, then let's put those words to the side and actually care about what we mean. What is a future vision that we can live together in this land that includes both of us?
What the Israeli government is trying to do right now is to push for criminalizing any criticism of the state of Israel, any
That's not true.
criticism of
I
the
don't know
government
one
of
Israeli
Israel.
that doesn't criticize the Israeli government.
But Americans are not having that right. See, Americans nowadays are realizing what the Middle Easterns and the Palestinians have been dealing with for the past 75 years. Which is the reason there are dictatorships in the Middle East is to protect the state of Israel. Whether you believe it or not,
So
that's
why there's
that's what people
all to
believe.
support so there was no dictatorships before the state of Israel?
You know who's the second receiving of America?
The reason why there's dictatorship is because they're protecting the state of Israel. What? What is that? What? All right, bro. All right, let's move on to the next point.
My next surrounded claim is that Jews are indigenous to the land of Israel.
All right.
I don't give a fuck, to be honest. Nobody here, I guarantee, will have a good point to bring up regarding Jews being indigenous. I guarantee it. So I could just skip this. All right.
Surrounded claim is that Zionism is not colonization, it is decolonization.
All right. If you would like to be the next debater, get.
I know exactly what his argument's going to be: the removal of certain forces to reclaim your land. Let's see if people can address this point. So we'll see.
To the chair in 3, 2, 1.
Rudy, I respect your ability to have a calm demeanor, and I think that your patience can do well for an Instagram career. I just don't understand how you can look someone in the face whose family's home has been bulldozed by the IOF and tell him that you see him as a cousin. That is just insane. And
Baze, you got it, bro. You're the hero. You're gonna get all those. You're gonna get all those likes about you. Hey, you're the hero. You're morally justice. Yeah, you're him, Superman, bro. No, nobody gives a fuck about what you're doing here. You stop doing it. Have a conversation. But I do want to see. Does she talk? No, she doesn't. She's probably going to talk a little bit.
And I want you to be able to explain to that how you rationalize the incongruity of saying that you are here to protect people that are indigenous and living in the land while whitewashing and carrying water for a genocidal regime.
So the same way that there are many Palestinians who've killed family members of mine, people of mine, I don't see all Palestinians as responsible for that. So if he's going to criticize a policy that was done against his family, I don't know the particular case.
Shut the fuck up. This is why I don't respect this moral hypocrisy glitch. Because there's no way you can do that. There's so many people in Israel that has family that died. Like, you just can't do that unless you're gonna do the glitch where it goes like, oh, I don't care if your family dies. They're not these people. These people matter. Your people don't. That's the only way you get this makes sense, which it doesn't. It's like, what are we doing? Stop doing it.
All Palestinians as responsible for that. So if he's going to criticize a policy that was done against,
he's like, fuck, I can't play the moral high ground. Oh shit, his family died. Fuck, shit. What am I gonna do now?
his family. I don't know the particular case that happened against his family, but it's
no shade to you, my boy. It's just like that's not effective, and it never will be effective. No, unfortunately, one, there's two reasons. One, it doesn't really make sense to do that when there's so much moral ambiguity in this conflict. Two, there are certain people, not saying that this guy is that, there are certain people that you can cry a river to in terms of people who are suffering. They just won't internalize that suffering. You do, because you're a caring person and whatnot. Certain people don't, unless it's specifically happening to like a friend or family. So you just have to change how you speak to these people. And it can be frustrating, but that's just reality, because the point is not to look good on the internet, right? Like good on Instagram, like you try to do that dumb shit. The point is explaining your point of view, expanding the perspective being noted here, so we can achieve better results. That's the point of these conversations.
sounds horrible, I can recognize that that's something horrible and still be able to see him as my family. What you've currently associated is that anyone who is pro-Israel and believes that the Jews have a right to self and still be able to see him as my family. What you've currently
Yeah, let me laugh at your family dying. Yes, yes, fuck your family. Like, what are you laughing about? You just said he had families dying, but he doesn't blame all Palestinians. What are you laughing about? What's so funny? Would you be doing that same thing if we're talking about Palestinian death? No. Moral hypocrisy glitch, like I'm saying.
associated is that anyone who is pro-Israel and believes that the Jews have a right to self-determine must mean that they're anti-Palestinian. And that is what has been plaguing us from being able to move forward, because I see Palestinians as my family. I support their rights to live in this land as equal citizens of this land.
I want to believe that. I want to believe that those are your genuine feelings. I really do. I'm not going to sit here and
No,
criticize.
you don't. You don't want to believe that. You don't want to at all. You've been attacking this guy ever since you started talking to him. Stop. Stop doing that. That shit pisses everybody off. Everybody gets angry of this guy false niceties. Stop being falsely nice. You don't respect this man because he's Israeli. You don't. That's just the truth. Be honest.
As your own personal morals or ideology.
Sure.
But what I will say is the regime that you are justifying does not believe that. They do not see the humanity in the people that they bomb indiscriminately. I've experienced the tactics of the IDF, not because I've stepped foot in Israel or Gaza or the West Bank, but because ICE agents right now are currently being trained by the IOF on the tactics to use against civilian populations. They might have different uniforms, but the ideology is exactly the same. You permanently call an entire population a security threat, you militarize enforcement, and then you demand that those citizens are detained or removed in order to show the full force of that regime, whether that is Israel, whether that's the United States. So when I'm seeing that done to my neighbors domestically, whether that's migrants or citizens that are being killed in the street, or I see that in a Palestinian that is under rubble from Israeli bombs, I feel that sense that I know what humanity looks like. And when I see people who defend Israel tell me to not believe my own eyes, when I'm watching videos constantly scrolling of babies being murdered, I cannot sit here and say that you believe what you say when you say that Israel is having their best interests in mind.
Buddy, creating your whole moral framework from stuff you see on social media is not the correct way to go about this. It's just not. It's not. I do think it's important to feel something when you see people suffering. That's step one. That is Picasso. That is perfect. And I respect that you feel that way. I want more people to feel that way. Step two is contextualizing what is taking place, because that is one of the easiest things when it comes to propaganda and manipulation, appealing to emotion. The situation is not as simple as let's stop bombing, unfortunately, because there's bad actors on both sides. And this is not a Democrat, Republican, both sides. No, I think Netanyahu is objectively bad, and I think far-right Israelis in the government are objectively bad. Hamas is objectively bad as well. So it's not simple. It's not easy to understand. These videos you see of Palestinians, there are videos of happening to people in Israel. October 7th is a perfect example. So contextualize, feel, get active, contextualize the circumstance. There's objectively wrongful things taking place, and then there's more ambiguous ones. That's the problem here. And I think that's the problem with a lot of people when they just scroll through social media.
Sure. So there's plenty of disagreements that I have with the Israeli government. I don't know one Israeli that doesn't disagree with aspects of the Israeli government, and we can go into those details. You said that Israel is indiscriminately bombing Palestinians. That is not true. What we see, that is not.
Me?
I let you finish their statements.
I don't know how to allow you to just say lies like
as
this.
an Israeli, okay, who served in the army, who was brought back in the reserves, and was in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Syria, doing my best to prevent us from fighting and to stop the situation from continuing. It is not true what you're saying. What you saw is Instagram reels. What you saw is videos on YouTube. And yes, there were horrible situations where civilians died, and that's my family. Those are my cousins that have perished due to this conflict. And that's why it gives us a greater responsibility. I let you finish. It gives us a greater responsibility to correct what happened. But Israel does not indiscriminately bomb. It sends leaflets. It calls phones. It does everything that it can to prevent civilians dying. Right?
How long before they bomb a hospital, or how long before they bomb a school?
72 hours. I found leaflets there of 72 hours.
72 hours to leave your roots in communities before we bomb the shit out of it.
To get out.
It's just like he's not a good political. I thought this guy was better at like political conversation, but no, he just the same like everybody else, just moral loading and not really addressing the points that are being made. You can make the argument that maybe a 72-hour frame is not enough, but I mean, war is not cherries and cupcakes. It's not at all. I think a good point or good conversation point to make for these people who just play into this moral hypocrisy glitch is ask them what should Israel have done after October 7th? After October 7th, what was the best action for them? To send the military into Gaza? Defy Hamas? Is that what it would have been best case scenario? Martial law, send the military in there? Now, don't get me wrong. I do think there are certain forces that are liking what's going on so they can reclaim more Israeli territory. And I think that's bad. I think that's bad for sure. But when it comes to conflicts like this stuff is pretty standard. It's just is. If you want to argue that they should have more time, I mean, that also gives more time for Hamas to escape. But this is standard. This is war. This is unfortunate. It needs to stop. But we also need to be honest on what is taking place. Because if we're not honest on what's going on, then this will never get resolved. Not at all.
What you're saying right now.
Unfortunately, Hamas has used your area in order to fight from there and has stored weapons and are using those weapons to
Let me
actually
tell you.
attack civilians.
Let me tell you. If there are someone that's robbing a bank and they hold up children as human shields, I'm going to say that the police shooting through those kids is not something that we can justify.
No,
so I don't give a
nobody's
fuck what you say
justifying.
about. We're going to be able to use human shields. That's why we have justification to bomb hospitals. That is absolutely
language
insane.
of being respectful. If we look at the two,
I said I respect you for it, but I can't do it after you're saying this right now. But I'm understanding what your motives are when you say that you worked in the IOF.
There are over 2 million.
There are over 2 million people. Absolutely not congruent with reality. So let's just hear the propaganda from the professional propaganda.
Projection.
Pause. We've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
On my social media algorithm, that's the truth. Based. There we go.
I'm going to start off with saying if historical connection and indigenous roots legitimizes trumping sovereignty of nations, then modern borders are meaningless. And if it doesn't, then Zionism is a political movement. And we have evidence of this, as Theodore Herzl himself is and was an atheist. We also have quotes coming from Ben-Gurion, who said, we want to expel the Arabs. We also had other people who have referred to Arabs as rocks that needed to be moved throughout the land of Judea. I actually have the name of it right now, Weitzman. I also want to say that we wanted to look at the word of Palestine. I know you were like mentioning that this came from the Romans. Actually, Herodotus, the father of history, mentioned Palestine 8 times. It actually comes from a Greek word describing the coast. So this isn't a term that came from the Romans of colonizing. And we actively see Zionism Palestine wasn't even the first option. Why did the Zionist Congress
This is what I'm talking about. This conversation about like the origins means nothing to me. It's just there's no definitive proof. No one can prove exactly who has origin, and who cares? Who cares? Humanity has moved so many places around the world. The origins of the land means nothing. The people who live here now mean everything.
consider Uganda and Argentina? That is a colonial project.
Okay, so let me answer to those things because you said a lot of things. Herodotus that you're bringing up is a Greek person. The pre-Greek population in Crete were the Palestinians. So obviously the collective that is now the Greek Empire would like to call other territories as part of their territory and would call that land Palestine. But the moment that that land really became called Palestine is the moment that the Romans conquered,
Syria,
way after the Greek Empire is the Romans. And in order to insult the memory of the Jews, they called that name Palestine. Why? Because that's actually also a Hebrew word, which means invaders. Now, I don't consider you to be an invader, but you should know that Palestine, Palestinian, literally in Hebrew, means invaders. Now, you talked about colonization, decolonization, indigenous populations. On the territory that was the indigenous population, being the Hebrews, the Jews, the Israelites, that was colonized by different empires, there was never a country that was built on top of it since. It was always in the hand of foreign empires until it was revived to being the land of Israel. Now, I do support indigenous liberations all across the world. The Tibetans, the Yazidis, the Kurds, the Aboriginals.
Yeah, okay.
Now, there's different...
That weirdo who keeps on just smiling and laughing at everything.
Types of indigenous liberations. Some populations want a state, some populations don't want a state.
So there was a sovereign state of Palestine.
There was not a sovereign state of Palestine. There was a British mandate of Palestine.
Okay, but there were still people who identified themselves as Palestinians.
Sure, I don't have a problem you identifying yourself as Palestinian.
So what I'm trying to say is that there were people who actually, you don't even need, technically under international law, you don't need to have a sovereign state in order for it to qualify as occupation. An occupation can be imposed on people who are not a part of a sovereign state, but of a collective identity, who have had, as you said earlier, a continuous presence on that land. I think one of the
Jews
other,
had a continuous presence.
and so did the Canaanites and the people who
Canaanites did not
converted
have a
to
constant
I don't want to
presence.
get into that debate, but
You
besides
brought it
that,
up.
there are people who have been there
The
continuously.
Jews.
And actually, there is plenty of ways to go about this, but there is evidence that prior to 1948 and prior to the creation of the modern day state of Israel, that there's an incredible influx of people who have converted to Judaism.
This is not
Yes,
true.
there
This
is.
is not
It's
true.
actually from South Africa. Multiple people.
This is
There's no historical evidence of a large wave of converts to Judaism immigrants to Palestine before 1948. Major pre-1948 immigration waves were composed overwhelmingly of people born into established Jewish communities, primarily from Europe and the Middle East, not mass religious conversions, including from South Africa. Interesting. To be fair, this is the prompt about like colonization, so of course they're going to have this conversation. This is interesting though.
not true.
After the
Would you
fall,
believe, please fact check?
they will fact check,
They
and it's
will.
written in Haaretz that they
So
after
you see an anti-Israel publication that posts an article, you read an article and you believe
I don't want to
everything
get
you
into I don't want to get into ad hominem. Let's focus
do
on the
not
facts.
have any ad
And to my
hominems against you.
knowledge, it is true, and it has been documented pretty well that after the fall of a South African apartheid state, that people converted to Judaism and suddenly had a more legitimate claim
The fall of the
to.
apartheid state happened way after the creation of the state of Israel. What are you talking
But
about?
I'm just saying that there's an influx of people that came and converted to the state.
No,
Anyways,
they're
I
Jews
want
who are returning home. They're not Jews who are converting.
Okay,
in the
so why
masses
don't we
and
have the
returning home.
Palestinian right to return, right?
for that right of
okay, but
return.
how come it hasn't happened? And if we had a Palestinian
That's a great
majority, I don't
question.
think
That's a great question. Why it hasn't happened? The reason it hasn't happened is because my population and your population are raised to see each other as enemies. And when we have conversations, it's always the idea of Jewish indigeneity and our access to the land and our liberation means the destruction of yours. And I'm against the destruction of your people.
Okay.
I'm for the idea
So
of your
why?
population
Okay,
returning home.
Zionism's earliest founders, and it has been documented. If they're all about, returning back home, why is every single one of their writing about
It's just not true.
colonialism? Yes, it is. You
No,
could look at
Herzl and other individuals spoke about creating a civilization with the other
you
inhabitants who
didn't
were living there.
recognize my point about Uganda and Argentina. If
That's a great-
Palestine,
thank you.
Palestine was not the only option, which goes to show that this is a colonial
No,
project because
Israel-
they considered other states despite not having as strong of a
Thank you.
religious claim.
Thank you for reminding me of the third claim that you made originally. So there were other options. It wasn't just Uganda. It was Argentina, Bilobijan, Angola, and Madagascar. And this is what the world offered to the Jews, not what the Jews wanted. The Jews always wanted to go to Jerusalem. That's why we pray towards Jerusalem when we get married.
Where does the name Jerusalem come from? Where does
when
the
we
name
smash the glass, I'll answer that after. When we smash the glass in our weddings, right? I'm sure a lot of you have seen movies or have been to a Jewish wedding. It represents the destruction of Jerusalem and the promise that our kids will return back home and rebuild Jerusalem. Now, Uganda was proposed to the Jews by Herzl. He said, look, I know we're being killed right now in Europe and we're about to be killed even more. If we don't get to our land right now, at least we'll go to Uganda and then we'll go to Israel. And the Jews rejected that. This was imposed by other people, not by what we wanted.
So, but the British
Zion is in
people imposed the Balfour.
Jerusalem, which means to see peace. One day we will have
Actually,
peace in this land.
Uru means in the Canaanite language from, and then Shalim is the Canaanite god of dusk, and that name has been around for centuries.
It's
6,000
also
years
Hebrew, Yehu, you will
before-
see, and Shalem,
before-
Salom being peace.
Actually, the Hebrew language, Ben Yehuda, the father of modern day Hebrew language, actually took many words from Arabic to revive that language because it has been dead for so many years.
We were still
because
using
there
Hebrew. It
was
was
no
not
continuous
dead.
existence.
There was continuous
There was
existence. We
Yiddish.
started Talmud. No, that's the spoken language. There was Ladino. There was Judeo-Arabic.
Yes,
there
there's
were
multiple
there
other
were
ones.
other
Yes.
Creoles spoken
Yes,
day
but
to
there
day.
was no
But
Hebrew,
we learned
and then
the
they
Torah.
used
We learned
modern-
Talmud.
Okay,
All of
then
our
why did
texts
they
are-
have-
I'm being honest, I'm gonna have to slow this down because this is, of course, history that I'm not familiar with because I'm not Jewish and I don't live in Israel. This is the most interesting conversation by far of someone who actually knows what she's talking about. Of course, he's gonna have the upper hand because he really knows his shit. But she's fighting back a little bit. At the very least, she's making him respond to everything, and he has a response for everything. To be fair, so let's keep going. I slowed it down.
Have
Hebrew,
the
and we were
JNF
using Hebrew.
to Judify the landscape by planting non-indigenous trees all throughout Palestine.
So is Judifying not planting
No.
something non-indigenous?
No. I'm saying this is according to the JNF. They Judified the landscape. They took committees to go around the Arabic villages of the names and give them Hebrew equivalent names. The same way Benjamin Netanyahu changed his last name from Milikowski to Netanyahu.
Because last names
They
are
did that.
200 years old.
Oh, okay.
Last names are the
What-
past 200 years.
so-
We did not have last names before. It was your name, son of your father, and of your tribe. And there are other Middle Eastern peoples who have very similar culture to that. Last name are new
So why did he go
inventions.
from Milikowski to Netanyahu, and why did they change village
A lot
names
of
and give them
people
Hebrew
rejected-
equivalent names with the modern Hebrew,
Actually,
which
we
is from Arabic
revived,
to
we
revive?
revived the name of Israel. Like,
Sure.
for example, Nablus, right? You know what Nablus comes from? It comes from Neapolis, which is Greek and Latin, which means new city, right?
Okay.
That the Romans renamed
So-
our Shechem, which was the indigenous name, to Neapolis.
why-
So
hold
when
on,
you
hold on,
have
hold on.
certain territories like Al-Quds going back to Jerusalem, which actually
goes
is called
to-
Jerusalem, or Safed going back to Tzfat, which is the
Okay.
original name, we're actually returning back to our language.
They actually
The
hired
language-
a committee, and
the
then I
language
hope
that
Jubilee
your
fact-checks this.
ancestors
It's called
spoke.
okay.
They spoke
Hold on,
Ivrit
they
and
actually
Hebrew,
no,
not
they
Arabic.
spoke Aramaic as well. I'm gonna
Also
okay.
after
Okay,
Hebrew.
can I get
Hebrew was spoken in ancient Judah and the southern Levant before the region shifted to Aramaic and later Arabic. Spoken in ancient scholars note continuity between ancient Levantine populations and modern groups in that region, including Palestinians. A 2020 study published in Cell found genetic continuity between the Bronze Age Levantines and later inhabitants. Palestinian identity as an Arab-speaking people developed centuries later. Okay, what are they fact checking here?
to my
When they
point
went to
first?
Babylon.
Why would they hire a committee to Judify the names of the town if they had such a legitimate claim to it and take the equivalent Arabic names and then give it? So you're saying that the Arabs
to decolonize
so
the name
Arabs,
of the land.
are you saying that the Arabs are colonizers
The Arabs
right now?
colonized the entire Middle East and North Africa.
So you're saying the
and you
Palestinians-
do not descend from the Arabs. You descend from the same family.
I would rather
that
you
I come
not
from.
tell me. Okay, I would rather you not tell me where I come
Are
from.
you going to
or-
deny that?
No, I'm not going to. I just don't want to go into that. I'd rather focus
sure
on
you
the
don't,
facts.
because all of a
I'd
sudden it
rather
means that
focus on the
our
facts.
people
You're going
are
into
the
ad
original
hominem
people.
instead of
Ad
logical.
hominem would be an attack. I'm
You
not
are-
attacking you.
Let's focus right now. So we're talking about how they had specific committees to try and.
Yeah,
Then why
keeps
would
on
they
saying
play?
stop using ad hominem. He's not attacking her. This is just not. He hasn't attacked her a single time. He's being aggressive, but I mean, this is a debate of a serious topic.
Decolonize the names of the land.
Why? Okay, so you're saying that the Palestinians who had lived there, because you're denying the Nakba right now, because
No,
the
I'm not denying
Palestinians
Nakba.
lived and called
I'm not
these their
denying
homes.
that there was a
Tentura was a
catastrophe.
home.
I'm
Okay,
not denying
awesome.
So he's saying that the names of things before that was there were not the original names, and when they came there, they returned it to the original names of for the descendants of that land. And she's saying these are Arabic names, and therefore these are names related to the Palestinian culture that was there at that time. So you were changing the Palestinian names. With that said, the fact
You not
check,
tell me where I come
Are
from.
you going to
or-
deny that from this colonized?
You're saying that had such a legit.
the fact check here was Hebrew was spoken in ancient Judah and the southern Levant before the region shifted to Aramaic and later Arabic. And here, Palestinian identity as an Arab-speaking people. So the Levantine and the Hebrew and the Judah stuff was before the Arabic stuff. So the fact check didn't help her; it hurt her case. That's tough.
legitimate
Colonized.
want to go into that. I'd rather focus
sure
on
you
the
don't,
facts.
because all of a
I'd
sudden it
rather
means that
focus on the
our
facts.
people
You're going
are
into
the
ad
original
hominem
people.
instead of
Ad
logical.
hominem would be an attack. I'm
You
not
are-
attacking you.
Let's focus right now. So we're talking about how they had specific committees
I
to
like
try
her,
and. Then why would they play?
To decolonize the names of the land.
Why? Okay, so you're saying that the Palestinians who had lived there, because you're denying the Nakba right now, because
No,
the
I'm not denying
Palestinians
Nakba.
lived and called
I'm not
these their
denying
homes.
that there was a
Tentura was a
catastrophe.
home.
I'm
Okay,
not denying the
awesome. I'm
catastrophe in
really glad that you're
1948.
doing that. So Tentura and multiple other cities all throughout Palestine that the people resonated with when they were forcibly displaced, as you know, 750,000 of them. Why is it that they built cities on top of them and gave them Hebrew equivalent names to the Arab? I don't call that decolonization. That is textbook colonization and trying to legitimize whatever false claim that comes from Theodore Herzl and the entire rest of his group.
Okay.
And I'd also like to look
answer.
at one more thing. I have
we
one
said
more
one
thing.
at a time.
Jaffa,
Please remember it.
they
Please
marketed
remember it.
they
Please,
marketed
please.
Jaffa as the land with no people for the people with no land. But this land was abundant with people, and Palestinians have consistently been present.
And
The
I believe-
Palestinian identity goes way back as well.
I believe you
And
should
then-
have a right to live in this land. And if we look at what happened in 1948, there were Jewish villages and Palestinian villages that were destroyed. That is what happens during war. Now, all the Palestinian villages that were destroyed were Palestinian villages that sided with the other Arab armies from the surrounding nations around Israel that attacked Israel in 1948 to ethnically cleanse and destroy Israel, bringing all the Jews from the river and into the sea. There are many Jewish villages that were destroyed as well. Most of the village was civilians, were innocent. So many people were displaced that shouldn't have been displaced. Now we need to have a conversation of how to bring them back. But you're only talking about when Palestinians are suffering to war. I'm talking about when both are suffering to war. And when you take the names,
who's suffering
Arabs,
from war?
Arabs
From
are
suffering to war from who?
Arabs are from Arabia,
Okay.
right? Jews are
So,
from Judea. It
I
is
would
very
ra-
simple. Arabic language poured into that land, Arabic names poured into that
Okay,
land
can I
is
first
not
ask
from
you
the
who
land
we
of
were
Israel.
at war
So
for it
us,
with?
us,
Who?
1948, Israel was attacked by all the surrounding Arab countries
Okay,
from Jordan,
Well, prior
from Syria,
to Israel's
Lebanon,
existence,
and
prior
Egypt.
to Israel's existence.
Yeah, there were many confrontations that we had between our peoples, like in the 1930s and
Okay, I'd rather
1920s,
look
the Hebron massacre, where Haji Mina Hosseini incited the population of
I would
Hebron
much
to go and kill the
okay,
Jews.
Let's look at Palestine present, Palestine proper, whatever you want to call it, the British mandate.
Palestine/Israel, it's fine.
Okay, no, from 1948, from prior to 1948.
Yeah,
People lived there and were forcibly displaced
both.
by a foreign entity
The
that
Jews
had
are not
come back.
foreign.
I view it as differently. I think that they
are
have
the
a
Jews foreign?
I think that there is a Jewish connection to that land, and I don't
So
think
they
anyone
cannot be
here.
foreign.
But here's the thing: I said this earlier. If historical connection and indigeneity alone trumps whatever people are already there, then all
It does
modern
not trump
borders.
other people. It
but
just
that's what
trumps
you're
your-
saying. That
no,
goes.
I'm
you're
just saying
that,
don't call it foreign. I'm saying it trumps the idea that we're colonizers and foreign people. And because you see me as a foreigner and other
So
Israelis
why
see
did
you as
El
a
Hayek,
foreigner,
a
that
geneticist
because
from
we
Johns
see each-
Hopkins, says
because-
that not a
because-
majority of the Jewish people in Israel do not have a connection to the Middle East. And I really hope I'm fact checked on this. His
Yeah.
name is El Hayek, and he's from Johns Hopkins.
The claim that most Jewish Israelis have no connection to the land is not supported by mainstream. Yo, she's getting coked with these fact checks. She asked for 2 fact checks and they both debunked her. That is crazy. That's actually insane work. I think people should stop asking for no, I'm kidding. Ask for more fact checks. Keep on fact checking. Fact checking is the best thing in the world because I'm tired of people lying to me. Large genetic studies published in journals such as Nature and the American Journal of Human Genetics find that major Jewish populations share substantial Eastern ancestry. Geneticist Aaron Elkick has proposed alternative models emphasizing mixed Eurasian origins for some groups, but his conclusions are debated and do not negate evidence of Levantine ancestry found in other studies. So, don't die.
And is an Israeli
there
geneticist.
are many geneticists that show that actually the Jews descend from this land, and Palestinians. We can go 60% of Palestinian genetics show that they descend from Jews. You can find publications. Hold up, you can find publications in Nature and the American Journal of Human Genetics. You can find the scientists like Nebel, Hammer, and Behar. I suggest everyone looks at it, and you can see that 60% of Palestinians descend from Jews. And if you go to places like Yatta, Yaffo, Hebron, Shechem, East Jerusalem, places that are ancient Jewish towns that are either
if you
today
want to
or
look at
half,
a case study,
either today
then
or
let's
half
look at how the people
Palestinian.
in Hebron are being treated. They are actively being caged in by the illegal settlers on that land, have their doors.
If you go to Hebron, the majority of Hebron is controlled by the Palestinians. The minority of Hebron is
They're
controlled
under
by
a
the Jews.
military occupation that is illegal.
One day,
it was supposed to be temporary, but it's been made permanent, and then settlers are emboldened
so it's not
to
illegal
commit.
because it hasn't ended, but it needs to end. On that we're agreed upon. I don't want the IDF to be controlling of people that don't have a right to vote for that army.
Wait. Are you saying that the settlements are illegal or not?
No, I'm saying that Jewish villages are not settlements.
They are. They are even referred to Daniela White. Daniela White even refers to herself as a settler.
I can source you other individuals who say bad things that are Palestinians.
The U.S. government in majority of its communications, the U.S. government this is the status quo. The U.S. majority calls it settlements.
So let me answer you and them. Settlements are built by settlers. Settlers are foreigners. Jews come from Judea. We are not the foreign population.
I don't agree with an American who just converts to Judaism.
They're not just converting to Judaism.
Some of them do. I'm not.
A very small
making,
percentage of them do.
But they still get a legitimate claim and have a take over the land over other people. Each
indigenous population controls their culture in a different way. The way the Jewish indigenous civilization controls itself is if you go through this many-year process of adopting an identity, a history, a culture, a value system, traditions. You are now part of the collective. It is not individuals that are indigenous. It is collectives.
So with this, so you're saying a collective identity that agree that they want to call in.
Jubilee does the post show where they have people back on. They need to have him and her back on. They just do. By far the best conversation out of everybody here. Nobody else was close. Oh, you brought him on, and we brought back on the doctor. The doctor was kind of mad, bro. You should have brought this girl back on. Round 2, bro. Round 2. But all right.
For the final section.
Conversation. I can continue the conversation with all of you, but I'm going to pick the doctor to continue having conversation. Pick the doctor to continue having conversation.
Rudy, can you tell us why you chose the doctor to debate for the final section?
Of course. I think a lot of times our populations are conditioned to seeing each other as enemies. I don't think you see me as an enemy. And I'd like to have a conversation forward of how our peoples can be able to come together. You have a very kind spirit about you. You're genuine. You're someone who's connected to the land. And I believe you care about the peoples in that land. So I would like to speak about how we can move forward on that territory, because there's no future without our peoples there.
Maisaran claim that with the current situations, we don't see a genuine desire among Israelis to achieve peace.
So I agree that the Israeli government is doing nothing to change the current status quo and benefits from that status quo politically, economically, and in many ways. This is a critique that I have openly in Israel towards the government, towards extremist voices, which to me are embarrassing. The things that they're saying, like Ben Gvir and Smotrich, that are going and talking about ethnic cleansing. This is horrible and not what our culture has to be. And I always tell Israelis that the biggest win of Hamas is not how...
Fair enough. I mean, there's nothing else to be said there. Shout out. Let's see how unhinged these comments are. Of course. The only place where this debate needs to take place is at the international court based. Can't believe this is the debate. Facts. Jubilee's brave to leave the comment section open in this video. Yeah, of course, a bunch of like online people on the left is going to go crazy. We all know this. First comment, he was fact checked to a loss. The debate was promised 2,000 years ago. W joke. There needs to be a live fact check. It makes debating useful when people are able to make arguments saying that someone's lying, such making up information. There was a live fact checking, and the people on this other side was losing quite. Please set up Rudy versus Mehdi. I think Mehdi would get destroyed. I'll be honest. He'll try to play the moral hypocrisy glitch card. Jubilee's a certified rage baiter with this one base. Facts. I just realized I don't have to watch. No one is making me. The thing I got from is that I wouldn't want to be this guy's cousin. Again, like a bunch of lefties who are part of the moral hypocrisy glitch. None of them could actually argue any of his points, so they're just going to attack his character. They do the MAGA strategy. Anyhow, that's all we got. Very interesting. There was only one good conversation that came out of this. It was with the girl with the purple. Most of the people were just doing the typical talking points. I understand though, like for some people who are actually genuine and care about people dying like this, like kids and women. I think you feeling bad is. I respect it a lot. I don't respect the picking and choosing when I care about humanity, of course. But I think the biggest problem with this conversation is not addressing the point of what do we do now? It's all about descriptions on what is taking place. And a lot of it is trying to understand historical context, but not knowing any of the historical context. So I think the best way to kind of reroute a lot of these conversations, it should be overall to the conclusion on like what is next. And I think you get a full understanding of what type of person someone is after you ask like, what should we do? And I do think we're touching upon that when he said we got to change the culture. I don't know what the fuck that means. And nobody else was able to follow up onto that. And they should have. You would have been able to fully understand who Rudy was if you asked them, how do we solve this? And if his argument is we solve this by fixing the Palestinians, then the Israeli bias is very clear there. Because it needs to be a two-front effort in terms of obviously cultural change with the Palestinians, but also cultural change with the Israelis too. Well, that's all we got. Hope you guys enjoyed. You have a good one. Take care and peace.